Hello. Let's see what this. Okay, good. I wanted to tell you, so obviously we gave that thing to Potato, and oops, 1 second. We'll get away from the music. Give me a second. Ah, there we go. So you know how we gave Potato the toy, the sheep toy. Yeah. So he's you know, kind of playing around with it, and then it squeaks, and he says, "Oh no, oh there's a squeaker here." So what this dog did is he immediately tore it open by the arm, like surgically tore it open, extracted the squeaker, and started running around chewing up the squeaker. So he has shredded the squeaker and still has the rest of the toy. It was with admirable precision that he extracted and chewed it. Yeah. He just like found exactly where to open it up, pulled the squeaker out, didn't like overly damage the rest of the toy, pulled out the squeaker and proceeded to chew the squeaker on its own for a while. So yeah. So Potato enjoyed it thoroughly. The squeaker is unfortunately no longer functional. Yeah. I thought you'd get a kick out of that story, though. Oh, tired. Give it a couple more minutes. Yeah. I have a headache today. It's been a day trying to get stuff to work. I have a headache today, and I think it's from the weather. Honestly, it has been raining nonstop since last night. Honestly, or rather, not nonstop, but it'll go for a long while, stop for a little bit. It'll start pouring again. So, yeah. It's been interesting. Okay. So we're just gonna give it another minute or so before we hop on in to chapter 9 of The Hobbit. We're chugging along. Oh, excuse me. There are what? 19 total chapters. So we're making our way through. Making our way. Yes. So I showed it to her. She's like, I really don't. Hey, Utensil, how's it going? So yeah, B said she doesn't really wear them that much, and she would feel bad about kind of keeping track of it. Not too bad, not too bad. It's been a heck of a day doing a lot of programming. So I'm ready to do something different. So we're gonna read The Hobbit. we're in chapter 9 of The Hobbit. So just something extremely different. Yeah, we're just gonna. This is part of our. So usually, I don't know if you've been here for consistently. Usually, what happens is Sunday and lately it's been Friday. Like Sunday, Friday, we'll do the more mathy, sciencey streams, and then Wednesday, in the middle of the week, we'll do either reading or playing a game or something like that, right? Just to kind of break up the pattern a little. So that is typically what we do. Hold on, I'm gonna nope. What am I looking at? Is this one? Yeah, there we go. Now we can actually potentially see the thing. See the thing. See the thing. There's the thing. Thing is seen. Amazing. So, we now have text on the screen, which is a step in the right direction. But my tea is almost gone, which is sad. I'm so sad. Oh well. Anyway, I think we have dithered and dillied and dallied long enough. So let's move on to chapter 9 of The Hobbit. Barrels out of bond. So if you remember, we just finished. So last time we were here, we just finished the fight with the spiders, and Thorin got imprisoned by the elves. That was what happened. Lurk away. Thank you for coming by. I appreciate it. We'll be back to our mathy roots again here on Friday. So, all right, barrels out of bond. The day after the battle with the spiders, Bilbo and the dwarves made one last despairing effort to find a way out before they died of hunger and thirst. They got up and staggered on in the direction which 8 of the 13 of them guessed might be the one on which the path lay, but they never found out if they were right. Such day as there ever was in the forest was fading once more into the blackness of night when suddenly out sprang the light of many torches all around them like hundreds of red stars. Out leaped wood elves with their bows and spears and called the dwarves to a halt. There was no thought of a fight. Even if the dwarves had not been in such a state that they were actually glad to be captured, their small knives, the only weapons they had, would have been no use against the arrows of elves that could hit a bird's eye at dusk. So they simply stopped dead and sat down and waited. All except Bilbo, who popped on his ring and slipped quickly to one side. That is why when the elves bound the dwarves in a long line, one behind the other, and counted them, they never found or counted the hobbit. Nor did they hear or feel him trotting along well behind their torchlight as they led off their prisoners into the forest. Each dwarf was blindfolded, but that did not make much of a difference, for even Bilbo, with his with the use of his eyes, could not see where they were going, and neither he nor the others knew where they had started from anyway. Bilbo had all he could do to keep up with the torches, for the elves were making the dwarves go as fast as they could, thick and weary as they were. The king had ordered them to make haste. Suddenly the torches stopped, and the hobbit had just time to catch up with them before they began to cross the bridge. It was a bridge that led across the river to the king's doors. The water flowed dark and swift and strong beneath, and at the far end were the gates before the mouth of a huge cave that ran into the side of a steep slope covered in trees. There the great beeches came right down to the bank till their feet were in the stream. Across the bridge, the elves thrust their prisoners, but Bilbo hastened in the rear. He did not at all like the look of the cavern mouth, and he only made up his mind not to desert his friends just on time to scuttle in at the heels of the last elves before the great gates of the king closed behind them with a clang. Inside the passages were well lit with red torchlight, and the elf guards sang as they marched along the twisting, crossing, and echoing paths. These were not like those of the goblins of the goblin cities. They were smaller, less deep underground, and filled with a cleaner air. In the great hall with pillars hewn out of the living stone sat the elf king on a chair of carven wood. On his head was a crown of berries and red leaves, for the autumn was come again. In the spring he wore a crown of woodland flowers. In his hand he held a carven staff of oak. Sorry, just as an aside, so much of this feels like it was pulled from Midsummer's Night Dream. Anyway. The prisoners were brought before him, and though he looked grimly at them, he told his men to unbind them, for they were ragged and weary. Besides, they need no ropes in here, said he. There is no escape from my magic doors for those who were once brought inside. Long and searchingly he questioned the dwarves about their doings, and where they were going to, and where they were from, but he got a little more news out of them than they did Thorin. They were surly and angry, and did not even pretend to be polite. What have we done, O king? Said Balin, who was the eldest left. Is it a crime to be trapped in your forest, to be hungry and thirsty, to be trapped by spiders? Are the spiders your tame beasts or your pets, if killing them makes you so angry? Such a question, of course, made the king angrier than ever, and he answered, "'Tis a crime to wander in my realm without leave. Do you forget that you were in my kingdom, using the road that my people made? Do not the times pursue and trouble my people in the forest, and rouse the spiders with your riot and clamor? After all the disturbance that you have made, I have a right to know what brings you here, and if you will not tell me now, I will keep you in prison until you have learned sense and manners." And he ordered the dwarves each to be put in a separate cell and to be given food and drink, but not allowed to pass the doors of their little prisons until one of them at least was willing to tell him what he wanted to know. But he did not tell them that Thorin was a prisoner with him. It was Bilbo that found that out. Poor Mr. Baggins. It was a weary long time that he lived in that place, all alone and always in hiding, never daring to take off his ring, hardly daring to sleep, even tucked away in the darkest and remotest corners he could find. For something to do, he took to wandering about the Elf King's palace. Magic shut the gates, but he could sometimes get out if he was quick. Companies of the Wood Elves, sometimes with the king at their head, would from time to time ride out to hunt or to other business in the woods and the lands to the east. Then, if Bilbo was very nimble, he could slip out just behind them. Although it was a dangerous thing to do, more than once he was nearly caught by the doors as they clashed together when the last elf passed. Yet he did not dare to march among them because of his shadow, although altogether thin and wobbly though it was in torchlight, or for fear of being bumped into and discovered. When he did go out, which was not very often, he did no good. He did not wish to desert the dwarves, and indeed, he did not know where in the world to go without them. He could not keep up with the hunting elves all the time they were out, so he never discovered the ways of out of the wood, and was left to wander miserably in the forest, terrified of losing himself until a chance came of returning. He was hungry too outside, for he was no hunter, but inside the caves he could pick up a living of some sort by stealing food from store or table when no one was at hand. I am like a burglar that can't get away, but must go on miserably burgling the same house day after day, he thought. This is the dreariest and dullest part of this wretched, tiresome, and uncomfortable adventure. I wish I was back in my hovel hole with my own warm fireside and with the lamp shining. He often wished, too, that he could get a message for help to the wizard, but that, of course, was quite impossible. And he soon realized that if anything was to be done, it would have to be done by Mr. Baggins alone and unaided. Hello, welcome in. Eventually, after a week or two of sneaking sort of life by watching and following the guards and taking what chances he could, he managed to find out where each dwarf was kept. He found all 12 cells in different parts of the palace, and after a time he got to know his way about very well. What was his surprise one day to over what it was to his surprise one day to overhear some of the guards talking and to learn that there was another dwarf in the prison too, an especially deep, dark place. He guessed at once, of course, that it was Thorin, and after a while he found that his guess was right. At last, after many difficulties, he managed to find a place where no one was about and to have a word with the chief of the dwarves. Yeah, pipes have kind of a wonderful magic in these books, don't they? Yeah, it's kind of like the mark of the of a lot of these characters, especially Gandalf, of course. And in The Hobbit, which is more of a whimsical book than Lord of the Rings, it comes up again and again. It's kind of something that's lit upon quite a bit. Anyway, Thorin was too wretched to be angry any longer at his misfortunes and was beginning to think of telling the king all about his treasure and his quest, which shows how low-spirited he had become, when he heard Bilbo's little voice at his keyhole. He could hardly believe his ears. Soon, however, he made up his mind that he could not be mistaken, and he came to the door and had a long whispered talk with the hobbit on the other side. So it was that Bilbo was able to take secretly Thorin's message to each of the other imprisoned dwarves, telling them that Thorin, their chief, was also in prison close at hand, and that no one was to reveal their errand to the king, not yet, nor before Thorin gave his word. For Thorin had taken heart again, hearing how the hobbit had rescued his companions from the spiders, and was determined once more not to ransom himself with promises to the king to share in the treasure, until all hope of escaping in any other way had disappeared. Until, in fact, the remarkable Mr. Invisible Baggins, of whom he began to have a very high opinion indeed, had altogether failed to think of something clever. The other dwarves quite agreed that when they got the message, they all thought their own shares in the treasure, which was quite regarded as theirs in spite of their plight and the still unconquered dragon, would suffer seriously if the wood elves claimed a part of it, and they all trusted Bilbo. Just what Gandalf had said would happen, you see. Perhaps that was part of his reason for going off and leaving them. Bilbo, however, did not feel nearly so hopeful as they did. He did not like being depended on by everyone, and he wished he had the wizard at hand, but that was no use. Probably all the dark distance and Mirkwood lay between them. He thought and thought until his head nearly burst, but no bright ideas would come. One invisible ring was a very fine thing, but it was not much good among 14. But of course, as you have guessed, he did rescue his friends in the end, and this is how it happened. One day, nosing and wandering about, Bilbo discovered a very interesting thing. The great gates were not the only entrance to the caves. A stream flowed under part of the lowest regions of the palace, and joined the forest river some way further to the east beyond the steep slope out of which the main mouth opened. Where this underground watercourse came forth from the hillside, there was a water gate. There, the rocky roof came down close to the surface of the stream, and from it, a portcullis could be dropped right to the bed of the river to prevent anyone coming in or going out that way. But the portcullis was often opened, for a good deal of traffic went out and in by the water gate. If anyone had come in that way, he would have found himself in a dark, rough tunnel leading deep into the heart of the hill. But at one point where it passed under the caves, the roof had been cut away and covered with great oaken trapdoors. These opened upwards into the king's cellars. There stood barrels and barrels and barrels, for the wood elves, and especially their king, were very fond of wine, although no vines grew in these parts. The wine and other goods were brought far away from their kinsfolk in the south, or from the vineyards of the men in distant lands. Hiding behind one of the largest barrels, Bilbo discovered the trapdoor and their use, and lurking there, listening to the talk of the king's servants, he learned how the wine and other goods came up the rivers or over land and to the long lake. It seemed a town of men still throve there, built out on bridges far into the water as a protection against enemies of all sorts, and especially against the dragon of the mountain. From the lake town, the barrels were brought up the forest river. Often they were just tied together like big rafts or pulled or rowed up the stream. Sometimes they were loaded onto flat boats. When barrels were empty, the elves cast them through the trapdoors, opened the water gate, and out the barrels floated in the stream, bobbing along until they were carried by the current to a place far down the river where the bank jutted out to near the very eastern edge of Mirkwood. There they were collected and tied together and floated down to Lake Town, which stood close to that point where the Forest River flowed into Long Lake. For some time, Bilbo sat and thought about this Watergate and wondered if it could be used for an escape for his friends, and at last he had the desperate beginnings of a plan. The evening meal had been taken to the prisoners. The guards were tramping away down the passage, taking the torchlight with them and leaving everything in darkness. When Bilbo heard the king's butler bidding the chief of guards good night, "Now come with me," he said, "and taste the new wine that's just come in. I shall be hard at work tonight clearing the cellars of empty wood. So let's have a drink first to help our labor." "Very good," laughed the chief of guards. "I'll taste with you and see if it's fit for the king's table. There's a feast tonight, and it would not do to send up poor stuff." When he heard this, Bilbo was all aflutter, for he saw that luck was with him, and he had a chance at once to try his desperate plan. He followed the two elves until they entered the small cellar and sat down at the table on which two large flagons were set. Soon they began to drink and laugh merrily. Luck of an unusual kind was with Bilbo then. It must be potent wine to make a wood elf drowsy, but this wine, it seemed, was of the heady vintage of the great gardens of Dorowin, not meant for soldiers or servants, but for the king's feasts only, and for smaller bowls, not for the butler's great flagons. Very soon the chief guard nodded his head and then laid it on the table and fell fast asleep. We're going to pause here for a little bit because there's an ad running. So I'm going to try and drink the last of my tea. I now have a dog curled up at my feet, which seems highly appropriate for reading The Hobbit. One should always read The Hobbit with a dog about, in my opinion. Hey, Potato, how you doing? Potato has his cone off, finally. So his leg is healed to the point where he can have his cone off. So that's nice. He's feeling pretty good about that. But, oh, man. I've been sitting at this silly computer all day doing work. Still more to do, but that's okay. Yeah, just making some models and testing the models and trying to improve them. It's fun. Actually, it is. It's interesting to try and put together. Just takes longer than I would like. Anyway, 15 seconds. Okay. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, and we're back. So, very soon the chief guard nodded his head and laid it on the table and fell fast asleep. The butler went on talking and laughing to himself for a while without seeming to notice, but soon his head too nodded on the table and he fell asleep and snored beside his friend. Then in crept the hobbit. Very soon the chief guard had no keys, but Bilbo was trotting as fast as he could to get along the passages towards the cells. The great bunch seemed very heavy in his arms, and his heart was often in his mouth, in spite of his ring, for he could not prevent the keys from making every now and then a loud clink and clank, which put him all in a tremble. First he unlocked Balin's door, and locked it again carefully as soon as the dwarf was outside. Balin was most surprised, as you can imagine, but glad he was able to get out of his wearisome little stone room. He wanted to stop and ask questions and know what Bilbo was going to do and all about it. "No time now," said the hobbit. "You must follow me. We must all keep together and not risk getting separated. All of us must escape or none, and this is our last chance. If this is found out, goodness knows where the king will put you next. With chains on your hands and feet too, I expect. Don't argue. There's a good fellow." And he went from door to door until his following had grown to 12, none of them too nimble, what with the dark and what with their long imprisonment. Bilbo's heart thumped every time one of them bumped into another or grunted or whispered in the dark. Rat this dwarfish racket, he said to himself. But all went well, and they met no guards. As a matter of fact, there was a great autumn feast in the woods that night, and in the halls above. Nearly all the king's folk were merrymaking. At last, after much blundering, they came to Thorin's dungeon, far down in the deep place, and fortunately not far from the cellars. Upon my word, said Thorin, when Bilbo whispered to him to come out and join his friends. Gandalf spoke true as usual. A pretty fine burglar you make, it seems, when the time comes. I am sure we all are forever at your service, whatever comes after this. But what comes next? Bilbo saw that the time had come to explain his idea as far as he could, but he did not feel at all sure how the dwarves would take it. His fears were quite justified, for they did not like it a bit, and started grumbling loudly in spite of their danger. We shall be bruised and battered to pieces and drowned too, for certain, they muttered. We thought you had managed to get a sensible notion when you managed to get a hold of the keys. This is a mad idea.
I was just like, where's the dog? He's not downstairs. He's not outside.
Yep.
And I didn't see him over there.
The dog has curled up here.
He's very cute.
Yeah.
Had to be a good boy for Daddy, okay?
He's being good.
All right, love you.
Love you.
Enjoy your reading.
Yep. Okay, where are we? We shall be bruised and battered to pieces and drowned too, for certain, they muttered. We thought you had got some sensible notion when you managed to get a hold of the keys. This is a mad idea. Very well, said Bilbo, very downcast and also rather annoyed. Come along back to your nice cells and I will lock you up again. You can sit there comfortably and think of a better plan, but I don't suppose I shall ever get a hold of the keys again, even if I feel inclined to try. That was too much for them, and they calmed down. In the end, of course, they had to do just what Bilbo suggested, because it was obviously impossible for them to try and get their way into the upper halls and fight their way out the gates that were closed by magic, and it was no good grumbling in the passages until they were caught again. So following the hobbit down to the lowest cellars, they crept. They passed a door through which the chief guard and the butler could be seen happily snoring with smiles upon their face. The wine of Dorwinian brings deep and pleasant dreams. Hello? Hello? Are we still live? What on earth is going on? Are we still live? There he goes. Okay, that was weird. Sorry about that. My browser froze for a little bit there. That was very bizarre. Okay. Where are we? Yes. In the end, that was too much for them, and they calmed down. In the end, of course, they could do... Okay, right. The wine of Dorwinian brings deep and pleasant dreams. There would be a different expression on the face of the chief guard the next day, even though Bilbo, before he went on, stole in and kind-heartedly put the keys back on his belt. That'll save him from some trouble he's in for, said Mr. Baggins to himself. He wasn't a bad fellow and quite decent to the prisoners. We'll puzzle them all, too. They will think we had a very strong magic to pass through these locked doors and disappear. Disappear. We've got to get busy real quick if that's to happen. Balin was told off to watch the guards and the butler and to give warning if they stirred. The rest went down to the adjoining cellar with the trap doors. There was little time to lose. Before long, as Bilbo knew, some elves were under orders to come down and help the butlers to get the empty barrels through the doors into the stream. These were in fact already standing in rows in the middle of the floor waiting to be pushed off. Some of them were wine barrels, and these were not of much use as they could not easily be opened at the end without a great deal of noise, nor could they easily be secured again. But among them were several others. which had been used for bringing other stuffs, butter, apples, and all sorts of things to the king's palace. Soon they found 13, with room enough for a dwarf in each. In fact, some were too roomy, and as they climbed in, the dwarves thought anxiously of the shaking and bumping they would get to inside, though Bilbo did his best to find straw and other stuff to pack them in as closely as could be managed with short time. At last, 12 dwarves were stowed. Thorin had given a lot of trouble and turned and twisted in his tub and grumbled like a large dog in a small kennel, while Balin, who came last, made a great fuss about his air holes and said he was stifling even before his lid was on. Bilbo had done all he could to close the holes in the sides of the barrels and to fix all the lids safely as he could manage, and now he was left alone again, running around and putting finishing touches on the planking and hoping against hope that his plan would come off. It had not been done a bit too soon. Only a minute or two after Balin's lid had been fitted on, there came the sound of voices and the flicker of lights. A number of elves came laughing and talking into the cellars and singing snatches of songs. They had left a merry feast in one of the halls and were bent on returning as soon as they could. "Where's old Gallion the butler?" said one. "I haven't seen him at his tables tonight. He ought to be here now to show us what's to be done." "I shall be angry if the old slow coach is late," said the other. I wish to waste no time down here while the song is up." came a cry. "Here's the old villain with his head in a jug. He's been having a little feast all to himself with his friend the captain." "Shake him, wake him," shouted the others impatiently. Gallion was not at all pleased to be shaken or wakened, and less at being laughed at. "You're all late," he grumbled. "Here I am waiting and waiting down here, and you fellows drink and make merry and forget your tasks. Small wonder I fell asleep from weariness." "Small wonder," said they, when the explanation stands close at hand in a jug. "Count, give us a taste of your sleeping draught before we fall to. No need to wake the turnkey yonder. He has his share by the looks of it." And they all drank one round and became mighty merry all of a sudden. But they did not quite lose their wits. "Save us, Gallion," cried some. "You began your feasting early and muddled your wits. You have stacked some of the casks here instead of the empty, some of the full casks here instead of the empty ones. If there's anything going by the weight." "Get on with the work," growled the butler. "There is nothing in the feeling of weight in an idle tosspot's arms. These are the ones that go, and no others. Do as I say." Very well, they answered, rolling the barrels to the opening. "On your head be it if the king's full butter tubs and his best wine is pushed into the river for the lakemen to feast on for nothing." Roll, 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 rolling down the hole. Heave, ho, splash, pump, down they go, bump. And so they sang, as the first barrel and then another one, first one barrel, then another one, rumbled into the dark opening and was pushed over into the cold water some feet below. Some barrels really were empty. Some were tubs neatly packed with dwarves in each, but down they went one after another with many a clash and bump and thudding on top of the ones below, smacking into the water, jostling against the walls of the tunnel, knocking into one another, and bobbing away in the current. It's just at that moment that Bilbo suddenly discovered the weak point in his plan. Most likely you saw it some time ago and have been laughing at him, but I don't suppose you would have done half as well yourself in his place. Of course, he was not in a barrel himself, nor was there anyone to pack him in, even if there had been a chance. It looked as if he would certainly lose his friends this time. Nearly all of them had already disappeared through the dark trap door and get utterly left behind and have to stay lurking as a permanent burglar of the elf caves forever. For even if he could have escaped through the upper gates at once, he had precious small chance to ever finding the dwarves again. He did not know where the way by land to the place where the barrels were collected. He wondered what on earth would happen without them, for he had not had time to tell the dwarves all that he had learned, or of what he meant to do once they were out of the wood. Well, all these thoughts were passing through his mind. The elves began very merrily to sing a song around the river door. Some had already gone to haul the ropes which pulled up the portcullis in the water gate, so as to let out the barrels as soon as they were afloat below. Down the swift dark stream you go, back to the lands you once did know. Leave the halls and the caverns deep, leave to the northern mountains steep, where the forest wide and dim slopes in shadow gray and grim. Float beyond the world of trees, out into the whispering breeze, past the rushes, past the reeds, past the marshes waving weeds, through the mist that riseth white, up from mere and pool at night. Follow, follow, stars that leap up the heavens cold and steep. Turn when dawn comes over land, over rapid, over sand. South the way and south the way, seek the sunlight and the day. Back to pasture, back to mead, where the kin and oxen feed. Back to gardens on the hills, where the berry swells and fills. Under sunlight, under day, south the way and south the way. Down the swift dark stream you go, back to lands you once did know. Now, the very last barrel was being rolled out the doors. In despair, not knowing what else to do, poor little Bilbo caught a hold of it and was pushed over the edge with it. Down into the water he fell, splash into the cold, dark water with the barrel on top of him. He came up again spluttering and clinging to the wood like a rat. But for all his efforts, he could not scramble on top. Every time he tried, the barrel rolled and ducked him under again. It really was empty, for it floated light as a cork. Though his ears were full of water and he could hear the elves still singing in the cellar above, then suddenly the trapdoors fell to with a boom and their voices faded away. He was in the dark tunnel, floating in icy water, all alone, for he cannot count friends that are packed in barrels. Very soon a gray patch came in the darkness ahead. He heard the creak of the water gate being hauled up and found that he was in the midst of a bobbing and bumping mass of casks and tubs, all pressing together to pass under the arch and to get out to the open stream. He had as much as he could to prevent himself from being hustled and battered to bits, but at last the jostling crowd began to break up and swing off one by one under the stony arch and away. Then he saw that it would have been no good for, even if he had managed to get astride of his barrel, for there was no room to spare, not even for a hobbit, between the top and the suddenly sloping roof where the gate was. Out they went under the overhanging branches of the trees on either bank. Bilbo wondered what the dwarves were feeling and whether a lot of water was getting into their tubs. Some of those that bobbed along by him in the gloom seemed pretty low in the water, and he guessed these had dwarves inside. I do hope I put the lids on tight enough, he thought. But before long, he was worrying too much about himself to remember the dwarves. He'd managed to keep his head above water, but he was shivering with the cold, and he wondered if he would die of it before his luck turned, and how much longer he would be able to hang on, and whether he should risk the chance of letting go and trying to swim to the bank. The luck turned all right before long. The eddying current carried several barrels ashore at one point, and there for a while they stuck against some hidden root. Then Bilbo took the opportunity of scrambling up the side of the barrel while it was held steady against another. Up he crawled like a drowned rat and laid on top, spread out to keep the balance as best he could. The breeze was cold, but better than the water, and he hoped he would not suddenly roll off again when they started moving once more. Before long, the barrels broke free again and turned and twisted off down the stream and out into the main current. Then he found quite difficult to stick on. He found it quite as difficult to stick on as he had feared, but he managed somehow, and though it was miserably uncomfortable. Luckily, he was very light, and the barrel was a good one, and was a good big one, and being rather leaky. It now shipped a small amount of water. All the same, it was like trying to ride without bridle or stirrups a round-bellied pony that always is thinking of rolling in the grass. In this way, Mr. Baggins came to a place where the trees on either hand grew thinner. He could see paler sky between them. The dark river opened suddenly wide, and there it was joined to the main water from the forest river, flowing down in haste from the king's great doors. There was a dim sheet of water, no longer overshadowed, and on its sliding surface there were dancing and broken reflections of clouds and of stars. Then the hurrying water of the forest river swept all the company of the casks and the tubs away to the north bank, in which they had eaten out a wide bay. This had a shiningly shore. This had a shiningly shore under the hanging banks. Not sure what that means. under hanging banks and was walled at the eastern end by a little jutting cape of hard rock. On the shallow shore, most of the barrels ran aground, although a few went bump against the stony pier. There were people on the lookout on the bank, and they quickly pulled in and pushed all the barrels together into the shadows, and when they had counted them, they roped them together and left them till morning. Poor dwarves. Bilbo was not badly off now. He slipped off his barrel and waded ashore, and then sneaked along to some huts that he could see near the water's edge. He no longer thought twice about picking up supper uninvited if he got the chance. He had been obliged to do so for so long that he knew now only too well what it was like to be really hungry, not merely politely interested in the dainties of a well-filled larder. Also, he had caught a glimpse of a fire through the trees, and that appealed to him, with his dripping and ragged clothes clinging to him cold and clammy. There was no need to tell you much of his adventures that night, for now we are drawing near the end of the eastward journey and coming to the last, greatest adventure, so we must hurry on. Of course, he was helped by his magic ring, as he got on very well at first, but he was given away at the end by his wet footsteps and a trail of drippings that he left wherever he went and sat. He also began to snivel, and whenever he tried to hide, he was found out by terrific explosions of his suppressed sneezes. Very soon, there was a fine commotion in the village by the riverside, but Bilbo escaped into the woods carrying a loaf and a leather bottle of wine and a pie that did not belong to him. The rest of the night, he had to pass wet as he was, far from the fire, but the bottle helped him do that, and he actually dozed a little on some dry leaves, even though the year was getting late and the air was chilly. No shingly. He woke again with a especially loud sneeze. It was already gray morning, and there was a merry racket down by the river. They would be making up a raft of barrels, and the raft elves would soon be steering off down the stream to Lake Town. Bilbo sneezed again. He was no longer dripping, but he felt cold all over. He scrambled down as fast as his stiff legs would take him and managed just in time to get in amongst the casks without being noticed in the general bustle. Luckily, there was no sun to cast an awkward shadow, and for a mercy, he did not sneeze again for a good while. There was a mighty pushing of poles. The elves that were standing in the shallow water heaved and shoved, and the barrels, now all lashed together, creaked and fretted. "This is a heavy load," some grumbled. "They float too deep. Some of these are never empty. If they ever come ashore in daylight, we might have a look inside." "No time now," cried the raftmen. "Shove off!" And off they went at last. Slowly at first, until they had passed the point of the rock where the elves stood to fend them off with the poles, and then quicker and quicker as they caught the main stream and went sailing down towards the lake. They had escaped the dungeon of the king and were through the wood, but whether alive or dead still remains to be seen. All right, there we go. There it is. Chapter 9 of The Hobbit. And I have a dog laying on my foot. Let's see. Sorry for the occasional interruptions. We're at 45 minutes. I wonder if I could get B to bring me a glass of water. And then we could do a short story, perhaps. Any chance of a glass of water? So I had my pre-stream tea, which unfortunately lasted just a little too long. And so now I am officially out of tea because I didn't have my second mug that I should have had. In the meantime, how about 1% chance. Thanks, B. Appreciate it. tonight's stream. So in the line of elves and fairies and craziness. Oh, thank you so much. My tea ran out.
Oh. Hi, oh my god.
My baby did not run out.
You have a tent. You're the cutest little baby there ever was. Oh my god. Alright, you go back to sleep. Sorry. He looks so cute down there right now.
Yeah.
Oh
He's like wrapped around my foot.
he looks like he's in a tent.
Yeah.
Little kid built a tent and, like, put him in there.
The cute puppy. Okay. I figured this would be an appropriate next thing to read. Oh, you can't see it. You can't see it. Yeah, can I see it? Let me see if I could fix that. And it's not a huge deal. Actually, it should be this way. There we go. It's just a little something that I figured we could read here. Cool. Oops. Move myself over to the side. There we are. This is always a fun one. So this is the last section of A Midsummer's Night Dream, when Puck addresses the audience at the very end. Kind of breaking the fourth wall. Actually, we'll do the last speech by Oberon, and then we'll go into Puck, right? Now until the break of day, through this house each fairy stray, to the best bride bed will he, which by us shall blessed be, and the issue there create ever shall be fortunate. So shall the couples three ever true and loving be, and the blots of nature's hand shall not issue stand. Never mole, hair, lip, nor scar, nor mark prodigious, such as are despised in nativity, shall upon their children be. With this field do consecrate, every fairy take his gate, and each several chambers bless, through this palace with sweet peace, and the owner of it blessed, ever shall in safety rest. Trip away, make no stay, meet me all by break of day. Exit Oberon, Titania, and Train. And Puck swaggers up. If we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended, that you've but slumbered here while these visions did appear, and this weak and idle theme no more yielding but a dream. Gentles, do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend. And as I am an honest Puck, if we have unearned luck now to scape the serpent's tongue, we shall make amends ere long, else the Puck a liar call. So good night unto you all. Give me your hands if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends. I love that. Yeah, potato boy. Puppy. It's such a classic moment when when Puck turns to the audience at the end and just Midsummer Night Dream is one of the best. I really like this play. It's one of my favorite Shakespeare's. But what should we proceed to? I think we should have a little more time. What's a good See, I'm not a fan of Wordsworth. I was looking at some Wordsworth earlier, and I didn't like it. I usually like Wordsworth. Grumble, 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 grumble. Who else would be a good one? Emily Dickinson's always pretty short. You could do some Blake. Blake is always insane. I'm up for some insanity. Yeah, shoot. Blake poetry. Now, my favorite poem of Blake is The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. That's my personal favorite. Um, but let's see. Okay, this is just about Blake. Do we have his actual poems here? See all poems by William Blake. Okay. Show more. Joy. Little boy lost. Oh, we did the poison tree a while ago. I love poison tree. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not. My wrath did grow, and I watered it in fears, night and morning with my tears, and I sunned it with smiles, and with soft, deceitful wiles. And it grew both day and night, till it bore an apple bright, and my foe beheld it shine, and he knew that it was mine. And into my garden stole when the night had veiled the pole. In the morning glad I see my foe outstretched beneath the tree. Mad song. Oh, that looks like a happy one. The wild winds weep, and the night is cold. Come hither, sleep, and my griefs enfold. But lo, the morning peeps over the eastern steeps, and the rustling birds of dawn the earth do scorn. Lo, to the vault of paved heaven, with sorrow fright my notes are driven. They strike the ear of night and make weep the eyes of day. They make mad the roaring winds and with the tempests play. Like a fiend in a cloud with howling woe, after night I do crowd, and with the night will go. I turn my back to the rest, from whence comforts have increased. For light doth seize my brain with frantic pain. Okay, sure. That's not my favorite of his. All right, we can do a little of this. Just just a little. Just a little. Just the argument. Rindhar roars and shakes his fire in the burdened air. Hungry clouds swag on the deep. Once meek and in a perilous path, the just man kept his course along the vale of death. Roses are planted where the thorns grow, and on the barren heath sing the honeybees. Then the perilous path was planted, and a river and a spring on every cliff and tomb, and the bleached bones red clay brought forth. Till the villain left the path of ease to walk the perilous paths and drive the just man into the barren climes. Now the sneaking serpent walks in mild humility, and the just man rages in the wild where the lions roam. Rintal roars and shakes his fires in the burdened air. Hungry clouds swag on the deep. This is a better one. Do they have the full? I don't know if they're the full. That's just the argument. Man, I haven't read this one in forever. It does fit the Hobbit. Man. The tiger. My dad used to read this to me when I was a little kid. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever because I was into Calvin and Hobbes. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulders and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? When thy heart began to beat, what tread hand and what tread feet? What the hammer, what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he make the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? Love it. Love it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe so. Like I said, I tried doing reading a little Wordsworth, and yeah, it's great. It's great for a kid. Yeah, I tried reading Wordsworth. Man, I did not like any of it. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't finding the good ones. Oops. Okay, so did not have any more by him apparently. At any rate, we're about a minute and a half from next. You know what? I think this is a good place to call it. We're at about an hour. So thank you all for those who came to listen to me prattling on and reading like a crazy person. I appreciate you. We will continue our trail into the Hobbit. Thank you, Mark. We'll continue our expedition into the Hobbit as time goes on, and the next stream will be on Friday, same bat time, same bat channel, where we will be doing some more mathy math stuff. So if that is more your speed, that is what we will be doing. In the meantime, since we have 5 people here today, that's awesome. Let's see if we can find a lovely person to what's it called? To raid. There we go. That's the word. There's a word for it. It's called raiding. We're gonna raid. Raid. Okay. Who is up? We've got. Let's see what we got that fits in with this. Who would be appreciated by this crowd? Well. What is this? Raid for charity. Come meet my stick bugs. Okay. There's always weird stuff on the science and technology, man. There's not all that many people doing science and technology. It's actually hacking. I see a security. No. There's just a lot of man. Let me see. Who would what is Miss Roog doing? She's playing a game. But she is a fun person. So I will send you all to something completely, absolutely different. And that is Miss Rogue. So thank you again, all who came here and hung out. We will raid. Is it No, is it this raid? There we go. Raid Miss Rogue. And I wish you all a wonderful evening. Miss Rogue is very different, but she's a very good streamer. I hope you will enjoy her content. So I will see you all next time, Friday at 5:15. Friday. All right. Goodbye, folks. All right, come on. No. Okay. Yeah, I forgot. It takes time. Yep. There we go. And wait for it and goodbye.